Welcome to How to Build a Fiddle, Part 4. When we were together last, we finished up our garland, but before we set it aside, we used it to trace out the shape of our fiddle on our wood. Then we cut it out, we sanded and filed down to the pencil line, and thicknessed our edges, and we began to carve out the rough shape of our fiddle. Here is where we are at right now. I have finished roughing in the shape of our fiddle. Now it's time to change tools. I'm putting away my 1-inch gouge, and I'm going to begin using my small planes, and I'm going to do further shaping of my fiddle plate. I have a little tip for you. Get yourself one of these cheap little clip-on lights. When you're carving curves in particular, lighting is key. As you carve and struggle to see the shape you are carving, let me show you what some good lighting can do. A properly placed light can make all the difference in the world as you try to make sure you're carving the arch well. Run your hands over your workpiece as you carve. Your hands will often tell you more than your eyes about the shape of the plate that you're carving. The next step is to take your long arch template that you made. That's the arch that goes from the top to the bottom of the fiddle. Place it on here, observe your high and low spots, and then get one of your small planes and go to work, and let's get this long arch correct. As you carve your plate and check your work with your template, note the high spots. Here's mine. I take a pencil, I mark a series of X's to indicate where I need to remove wood. I've moved over to my carving board. Notice how the light highlights areas that need to be attended to. Too high right here, in here, around here. Now I'm using my little thumb plane right now, and I have to constantly turn my work because of the grain of the wood. Picture the fibers of the wood as tiny bundles of straw laying one way or the other. I need to always be working downhill, whether it's this way here, or this way right here, or this way over here, constantly turning the work to get a clean cut. Well, I'm all done using my little thumb plane for now, and it's time to pull out the scraper and smooth this out. I wanted to throw out a little tip for you that might be helpful while you're carving the arch in your fiddle plate. Picture a little racetrack running around the perimeter of your fiddle plate, and it goes right past the points as if they weren't there, right past this point, right around. This area should be relatively flat, not dead flat, but relatively flat, and then gradually curve up. We're shooting for a curtate cycloid in the end. Here's a goofy little demonstration about how a curtate cycloid is formed. See? That's how we get the arch on our violin. I mean fiddle. Here's how that curtate cycloid figures into the arch on our fiddle plate. That little dotted line right there represents that racetrack I was talking about. After we install the purfling, we'll finish off that little valley. I have finished scraping my plate for the time being. A good way to check your arching is an artificial sunrise. Tip your plate down, watch the sun come up on your plate, and look for irregularities that need to be addressed. Take a handy tool to help you carve a good arch. Grab a scrap block of 2x4, make a mark at 4.5 inches, and another mark about 7.5 inches, and then make another mark, let's say 3/4 of an inch down from the top. At the 7.5 inch mark, we're going to strike a line and cut that off. At the 4.5 inch mark, we're going to strike a line. And at the 3/4 mark, we're going to strike a line. Grab something to make a radius. This is just the cap to a can of spray paint. I'm going to remove all this, and I'm going to remove all this. Now we have something that looks like this. That little saw kerf acts as a spring, and we can put a pencil in there, and we can use this little gadget to trace our contours. And by doing that, I can see I'm a little high right here, and I'm a little high right up here. So would this be a fail if it didn't turn out perfectly symmetrical? Absolutely not. In fact, there are some who argue that a slightly asymmetric fiddle or violin plate might sound even better. Do the best you can to achieve the archings that you're shooting for and to make your plate look beautiful. Guess where we are in our fiddle building project? And this is the point where some people wimp out, but you're not going to wimp out on me. We're talking about purfling here. And that brings up two topics to discuss. The first is materials. You're going to need to get yourself some purfling. You can order it from International Violin. It's easy to find on eBay. But it's time to get online and get some ordered. And I would suggest to get a bunch of it, because I'm betting you're going to do this again. The second topic is tools. The second topic is tools. So I have a little tool alert for you. I'm going to be using a compass to mark out the purfling line along the edge of the fiddle plate. And I'm going to be cutting the groove for the purfling using a Dremel tool. I wanted to point something out. This Dremel tool I bought in, I think, 1996. It was made in Wisconsin. I have used this for countless hours. And the bearings are starting to get a little play in them. And that causes some problems when I'm cutting my purfling groove. So I said, you know, I'm going to go get me a brand new one. So I went to Home Depot and I bought a new Dremel tool. And according to this, it was made in Mexico. Brand new. It has almost as much play in the bearing as my old one from 1996. If it has too much play, that bit is going to wander around. So I don't know what the answer is. I guess the answer is don't skimp on your tools. Maybe Dremel makes a higher quality one. I just wanted you to keep an eye out for that. What kind of a gadget do you need to get your Dremel tool to cut your purfling groove? Well, you could go on to StuMac or International Violin for about $50, $55, and you could buy one of these gadgets. Or you could choose to make one. I made this one, and I have done quite a number of instruments with it. Now what I did is I bought this little cheap Dremel router kit, and I stole the insert and mounted it here in this block of wood. Let me show you how this works. The Dremel tool just screws into the collar, like so, and you have your bit mounted here. And then you can drive it around your fiddle plate. The other one mounts in basically the same way, and it acts like a tiny router following the edge of your plate. You're going to want a 1.4 millimeter cutting bit for your Dremel tool. Right, the next step to prepare for installing the purfling is to trace out your line. I trace a line 5 millimeters from the edge. Now when you're routing with your little Dremel tool, it will not get up to this point. You're going to be cutting these points by hand. Now when you cut your purfling groove, you're going to cut it to 1.5 to no more than 2 millimeters deep. Okay? And please get yourself some scraps and practice before you jump onto your fiddle plate that you've just finished carving. Particularly, you're going to want to practice doing some of these little points here, okay? And then maybe create something called the bee sting, tiny little point there. There's some good videos on YouTube. Go check them out, practice, and then cross your fingers and start cutting your groove. By far the toughest thing is where you begin and end. The distance from the outside edge to the outside edge of the purfling should be 4 millimeters. A pair of these jeweler's goggles can come in awful handy when you're working on those tiny little points. And now you need to get in there and extrapolate how those points are going to end, because you're going to be cutting those by hand with your X-Acto knife. And this is kind of a tool alert. I made this out of a steak knife I stole. See that? That's for cleaning out the purfling groove. Or you can go online and you can buy one for full price. Your pick. Now that you've got your purfling groove all done and I've changed into yet another outfit, it's time to install the purfling. We got to get out our trusty bending iron and get that heated up. A little bit of water. I am using Titebond wood glue for the purfling because I have a much longer work time, and it just works really well for this application. I'm going to start on my C-bout right here, and I'm going to work my way around, and that's the way I do it. You might want to try a dry run and see what's comfortable for you, or maybe look in the book you bought and see what they say. But this is the way I do it. I like to cut the taper for my point ahead of time. Then I come in here and fit it. And then I'll kind of put my piece in the groove a little bit, work my way around, and then make a little mark. And then I'll cut this point a hair long in case I need extra. Okay, now I've got my piece fit and I'm happy with it. I've got a little Titebond in here and I mixed a few extra drops of water in, and I've got a scrap piece of purfling. I'm just going to pull my purfling out here. The long working time that the Titebond gives you allows me to do it this way. On some videos you'll watch fellas and they'll fit all the purfling all the way around, and I've had trouble with that. And if you're using hide glue, it sets up really quick and you don't have a lot of room for error. That's enough glue. I'm going to work this in here. Make sure that point's nice and tight in there. And then I get this little gadget I made. My little baby Thor hammer. See that? It's a little scrap of wood on a piece of 1/2-inch CPVC. And I use that to tap my purfling into place. I want to get it right down in the groove there, nice and tight. Okay, now a damp rag to clean that up. Don't leave tight bond glue on your wood. Alright, that's what she looks like. Now I'm going to start from here and work my way around this way. Here's that point there. Alright, now as I work my way around, I get to here, I leave this extra little bit out, then I can flip it around, fit it into place, get down nice and close with my knife, and I'll cut the point right here. There now, that wasn't so bad, was it? Got our purfling all done. Looking sharp. Boy, looks like a real fiddle, doesn't it? There is more than one way to install purfling. This is just the way I do it. Alright, we're going to set this aside and let this set up. Once this is dry, we're going to come back in and we're going to complete that little valley to finish off our curtate cycloid arch. I'm about to cut the purfling groove on the cherry, so I thought I'd give you a sneak peek. She's looking pretty. Now that I've cut the purfling groove in the cherry, I have to extrapolate my points, and up here where the button is, I have to hand draw that, and we're going to cut that by hand as well. Okay, there's the upper purfling groove all done. Now let me point something out to you. I'm working on my points here, and this one just started to try and think about chipping. You have to be very careful on those. Now if it does start to break away on that little point, stop everything. You don't want to lose that piece. Grab some CA glue or super glue, same thing. Get it in there and fix that little point. It'll be okay, and it will be invisible once you install the purfling. Well, it's time to prepare for the fluting, where we complete the little recurve in our arch. I like to use my tiny finger plane and get my purfling down flush with the plate. That helps me judge better while I'm running the gouge here to flute the edge. The fluting is essentially a three-step process. We're going to start with your 1/4 inch gouge, and you want a very shallow angle on your cutting edge, no more than 25 degrees, and razor sharp. Now let me show you how the cuts play out. Here's what we're shooting for. Here's a close-up of how we're going to get there. This is our purfling. Our first cut is with the 1/4 inch gouge, and it's a relatively shallow cut. It's about 1/2 millimeter. We want to leave at least a 2 millimeter edge. It can be larger. We're going to come back with a larger tool for our second cut to remove this corner. And the third step is we're going to scrape it to achieve this shape. I suggest your first cuts are up here at the top or down here at the bottom, okay? Because you're going across the grain. It's a little bit easier. If you make a mistake right here, don't worry, the neck's going there. No one's going to see it. When you work your way around these bends, you're going to find the grain going 2 different directions, and you're going to need to be very careful and slow and patient. That's why this has got to be razor sharp. Secondly, you need a low light on so that you can see what you're doing. I'll show you what I mean. Here, I have already started my fluting, okay? Feel free to draw a line for yourself to follow if you find that helpful. Now let me show you what the light does. There. Now I can see what I'm doing, okay? I hold my gouge just inside of the center of that purfling line. When you get to your points, you're going to start them from the actual point and work your way in just like that, okay? Right after the second gouge, you should look something like this. I think I'm going to take my little finger plane and knock off this edge right here just a little bit. And then I'm going to get in here first with this little scraper and even this out right here and feather it in. And then I pull out a funny little scraper I made out of a kitchen knife. I radius the tip and I've created a scraper edge. There are videos on YouTube showing how to make your own scrapers. And this enables me to scrape the outside radius around that purfling and give me a nice edge to my flute. This is what we are shooting for. A nice flute with an even raised edge all the way around. Is there a shortcut to this step? No. Is it hard? Yes. What's the secret? Well, the secret is to go slow, to be careful, take your time. Is your wood chipping out a little bit right here as you're trying to smooth down the arch across the grain? Well, it does it to everybody else. Is that point kind of driving you crazy? Well, it did it to me too. I think that's the difference between a beginner just starting out and an expert maker. You'll have a newfound respect for handmade instruments and the small details that you see in them. And I have kind of a newfound disgust for CNC milled, machine produced violins, and it kind of devalues the labor and the intense concentration that goes into carving one of these beauties. Well, for now, you should have two plates that look like this, with the purfling in, the fluting all done. I'm not going to finish my edges until later. And on the next video, we're going to haul these out and tune the plates. I'll see you there, I hope. This fiddle was made from a piece of locust wood. And yes, it was fairly difficult to carve.